I'm gonna play some guitar and watch some morning news. Comes on in about 2 minutes.
Right around the world. I'm Eva Suarez in London, and just ahead right here on CNN News.
One nation can't go in by force and change the borders of it.
Very provocative to send 130,000 troops to your neighbor's border. Military immediate reason.
Wants to replay the redo of the end of the Cold War.
The US and the UK order families of its embassy staff to leave Ukraine amid fears of a Russian invasion. We're live in Moscow this hour. Anti-vax and anti-mandate. Thousands take to the streets from DC to Brussels. We have the very latest on the state of the pandemic. And with less than 2 weeks to go before the Winter Olympics and just days before the Chinese New Year,
Countdown to Beijing Olympics.
COVID policy 2 years after Wuhan.
Live from London, this is CNN Newsroom with Eva Suarez.
Welcome to the show, everyone. It is Monday, January 24th, and
Lisa.
US President Joe Biden is said to be considering options to bolster troop levels in Eastern Europe amid fears of a possible Russian invasion against Ukraine. Now, according to Ukrainian intelligence, Russia has now amassed more than 127,000 troops in the region.
Biden discusses
And
options for
tensions
bolstering
remain
troop
high.
levels in Eastern Europe amid
Diplomatic
Russia-Ukraine
position,
tensions.
one of the strongest warnings yet. Have a
It
listen.
looks like a whole lot of baloney to me, so I did. But I just heard Marco Rubio talk about it, and he explained it.
In an aggressive way.
So I'm thinking, what's the difference? Why does it matter now?
And a united response
What's
from
the
us
point?
and from Europe. And again,
Apparently, the government in Ukraine wants to take some legal steps towards,
and again, across
you know, uniting with the West, whether that means treaties or NATO or whatever. And the government of Russia doesn't like it, and they're
Well,
thinking
Ukraine's
about
defense minister says the
invading
country
and
has
preventing
received
that
a
from
second
happening,
weapon shipment
according to
from the
Marco
United
Rubio.
States, tweeting that more than 80
So I guess
tons
that's
of weapons
plausible.
will help strengthen its defense capabilities. Ukraine's president has urged the US and its allies to penalize Moscow now for its military buildup. But the US Secretary of State defended the administration's decision not to impose sanctions preemptively, saying triggering them now could lose the deterrent effect.
What's at stake here, Diana, are some very basic principles of international relations that have been established since 2 world wars and the Cold War that have kept peace and security. Principles like one nation can't.
I don't think the U.S. really needs to do anything at all.
Principles like
I
one
think
nation
this is
can't
sort of a waste
dictate
of our
to
time.
another its policies, its choices.
I think it'll take care of
including
itself.
whom it will associate.
I think
Well, meantime,
Biden
the
wants to
US
use
State
it as a
Department says
way to
it
look
will
tough,
begin
and Russia wants to
reducing
do the
staff
same
levels
thing.
at the embassy
And Russia
this year,
might be a little
starting
afraid.
with non-essential staff and
But they probably got some
family
intelligence.
members
Maybe it was even bad intelligence.
caution. And in the last few minutes confirmed the British
Saying that
embassy
the U.S. is going to move into Ukraine or whatever, and then they said no way, and we stuck troops on the border. It's not like you ever hear Russia's side ever. If you ever want to hear Russia's side, you got to go way out of your way to go find a Russian newspaper or look on
to
Twitter.
discuss the situation in Ukraine. They'll be joined virtually by Secretary of State. So a lot going on this morning.
You don't hear a whole lot of Americans going, what does Russia think? What does Ukraine think? What do they want?
And there's the
What do their people want?
Paris for us. Nick, let me start with you. We've been hearing in the last few minutes that the UK is withdrawing some of its embassy staff and they're following on from the United States as well. How do you interpret these moves? Is it just prudent planning, Nick?
I think there are several ways to interpret it. It is prudent planning. That's what's being said. I think there's slightly the spectre of Afghanistan for President Biden hanging over this. Remember, it has been briefed over the weekend by his national security team and other advisors at Camp David. So he'll be fully up to speed on what's happening with the dispensation of Russian troop deployments and the potential threat that poses. And he said that he believes,
CNN,
that they could
I guess that the ratings dropped 90%
in
in 2022. So they would probably say or do any old thing to get ratings and say it in any way that they want, to get people to watch and worry and tune in and tune back in. This is the lead story. Halfway around the world, some of the country, and they haven't been real forthright about the way Russia put troops near the border, and then they withdrew the troops from the border. They're still acting like they're building troops up and they're about to invade. Marco Rubio implied it was going to happen within 3 weeks.
Ukraine is destabilized enough, for this concern about the
No,
United States.
I don't think it's beyond their capacity to create a problem
Game plan
or an
or not,
incident.
but it certainly does ramp up the stakes on what's happening. The language,
But I
the
think
possibility of
Ukraine
conflict,
should
and
make their intentions known, and so should Russia, and they should get over this and get through it instead of acting like overgrown children.
So much was said, and Nick and I discussed this
Shouldn't
last
be that
week at
difficult.
great length about the possible
Because, right now,
divisions within
could be
NATO.
wrong, but I
Where
don't
does Europe
think
stand
that the government
on the
in
possible
Ukraine is
Russian
a puppet
invasion? They are
U.S.
all
government.
from the same country.
Of course, they like U.S. money and influence.
No, definitely
and
not.
wanna
I think there's been a lot of tension
soak it in while they
within Europe.
can.
You mentioned a divided Asia, but there's a divided Europe when
So
it comes
they're,
to this
but
to adopt
I think
towards Russia.
as a rule, I don't think that they're all, I don't think the U.S. influenced the elections that brought that, their president there,
than they were before. And that's why
and had their whole
what
political
happens
party
at that
behind
meeting
them and stuff like
is
that.
going to be so important today.
So I think that they're able to decide what they want on their own without it being nonsense and just a puppet of another country.
Top diplomat on the
I hope.
outcome of that meeting. What would trigger sanctions from the European Union? What sort of sanctions to impose? Those are questions that we know that there is a division on within Europe, Germany and France on one side, and countries closer towards the borders, with the Baltic countries, calling, for instance, much more hard line in their desire to see strength from the European Union. And of course, as you mentioned, Antony Blinken will be taking part by video conference towards the end of the afternoon, once Europeans have had their conversations, and he'll be talking to Europeans about the outcome of his conversation with Sergei Lavrov. Europeans will be telling him about what they've managed to find. Of course, that question of resolving the differences in Europe, the divisions, crucial also to that unity that we just heard Secretary of State Blinken talk about, that unity that the United States is so counting on in its approach towards Russia at the moment. So a lot riding on this meeting today, and we've heard already as these arrivals continue, meeting delayed a little bit in the start from the Danish Foreign Minister this morning that he believes that Europe will be coming up with sanctions stronger than anything we've seen before, stronger than those in 2014, reflecting what Ursula von der Leyen has been saying these last few weeks. But again, getting everyone on board is going to be the struggle, the challenge today. We know that for Europeans to impose sanctions, they have to vote on that unanimously. Yeah, and we've had the Ukraine president that they've been urging the US and its allies to penalise Moscow and do it now. So we'll keep an eye on what comes out of these meetings. Mrs. Alda for us in Paris, Ms. Robertson in Moscow. Now, US lawmakers from both sides of the aisle are weighing in on how the US should respond if Russia invades Ukraine. But one Republican senator says the US shouldn't wait and must act immediately.
We do need to go ahead and impose sanctions on Russia now. We need to show them that we mean business and we will be there for Ukraine should they invade. They see a very weak administration, and President Putin sees every opportunity to do what he wants to do in Ukraine with very little pushback from the United States.
I do think they should take up and pass a bipartisan bill that will show resolve and determination and apply some sanctions now. But the very strongest sanctions, the sorts of sanctions that we use to bring Iran to the table, is something that we should hold out as a deterrent. If we don't do something strong right now, I'm afraid that he's going to invade Ukraine, which will have, as the Senator talked about, he's right, I think he did, it will have global ramifications.
Well, meanwhile, former US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo concerned the Trump administration told Fox News on Sunday he believes Russia does not see Biden as credible, and he suggested the US should respect Vladimir Putin's power.
We had deterrence for 4 years. Vladimir Putin didn't do these kinds of things. He didn't threaten. He didn't
How did Mike
use
Pompeo
coercive
sustain?
activity to try to push back on NATO in the way that we made sure NATO was focused on its mission. And when we did that, Vladimir Putin respected us. We had respect for him and his power. He's a very talented statesman. He has lots of gifts. He was a KGB agent, for goodness sakes. He knows how to use power. We should respect that. And if we did that, we could make sure we do the things that are right for the American people and reflect well on our country's history and traditions and pushing back and making sure that Europe and the Western world stood together.
Mike Pompeo there, well, but experts say what we're seeing from Russia right now is nothing new, and they warn the US and other Western powers to take the threat seriously.
Experts warn U.S. must take threat from Russia seriously. Like, please watch us. Please let us scare you. Please, please. This is real serious. Check back. Keep watching. What we're saying is important. You need to care. You need to listen. Is that what they're saying?
A failure of diplomatic talks that really were never concrete enough to resolve the situation.
If there is no pushback from the United States and from the West against Putin, there's going to be trouble. I mean, what has Putin learned from recent history? 2008, invades Georgia. What does he get? Basically, a strong wag of the finger from the West. Invades Ukraine and annexes Crimea. What does he get? Some sanctions, another wag of the finger. So, you know, if not now, when? If not where? If not in Ukraine, where are we going to stop? We're going to wait until it invades Finland or Sweden or something like that. So I can understand that there's got to be some strong pushback, and I think that that's what the Secretary is getting at when he's talking about these strong responses.
Well, the Biden administration has been in talks with a number of countries for weeks about
All right, first
stepping
10
up
minutes
production
of
of
the
liquefied
news
natural gas.
broadcast.
That is in case a Russian invasion
All about
of
Russia.
Ukraine leads to gas shortages.
No Ukrainian people talking, no Ukrainian government people, no Russian stocking, no Russian leaders. Nobody has any idea what these two countries want to do. What any of the people want, have a limited scope. What they want you to focus on is what they just said.
Now, America's top infectious disease doctor, Anthony Fauci, says he's reasonably confident Omicron cases could peak in the US by mid-February. Now, cases remain high overall, but appear to be leveling off.
Hope the US may soon turn a corner in latest COVID wave. Yeah, right, that's the last thing CNN wants. It's the only reason anybody ever watched the station this year. And last year.
We would hope that as we get into the next weeks to month or so, we'll see throughout the entire country the level of infection get to below what I call the area of control. And there's a big bracket.
Last person I want to hear talk
Control means you're not eliminating.
is an immunologist. I'm a healthy man.
It gets down to such a low level.
I do not need to hear from a goddamn immunologist that works for the government. This is the last fucking person that I need to hear from.
Well, there's hope that the youngest members of society could soon get vaccinated. Former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb says children
Now it's some goddamn person with a needle in their arm. Alright, I'm changing the channel, Issa. I don't want you to see people getting stuck with needles.
may be contributing to a sense that he is not taking inflation seriously. And watch this.
Here's Fox News. I won't be seeing people getting stabbed with needles on Fox News.
Not improved. COVID has not improved. Biden has not, stuck to any of his promises.
Inflation's going to hit 89%. We're going to be back to Jimmy Carter. And you know what happened to Jimmy Carter?
I really had such high hopes for this administration when they came in, and it's just been one disaster after another.
Well, as for the president's most recent push for voting legislation, Republican Senator Tom Cotton said this.
He is simply trying to cover up for what I think is going to be a disastrous election for his party because of his failed policies, rising inflation,
It's
rising
funny.
crime.
Cotton is one of those military clowns that will always be taken seriously a little bit because he is a veteran. But Jesus Christ, he has a backwards, antiquated
And
view.
how is this to start your day? An NBC News survey of top answers to
I like conservatives. They make a lot of sense. They say some true things, some right things. They're fun. They're interesting, unique. They care about a lot of things I care about. But they also espouse a lot of just nonsense.
The time is now 13 minutes after the hour.
Fear-mongering and no vision of where things to be the way they were 100 years ago.
On the campaign trail in his bid to unseat a popular Republican
Not caring at all about the environment. In fact, basically doing everything they can to destroy the environment without even giving it a second thought. At least the liberals act like they care and are apparently working to a clean future. Conservatives don't even bother acting like they care.
Election fraud. The U.S. House Select Committee chairman says they're looking into a draft White House proposal at the time for the Defense Secretary to potentially seize voting machines in battleground states.
To be honest with you, we've had
U.S. House Committee speaking with William Barr. This is January 6th bill. They're going to keep this in the news forever.
We are concerned.
They do not know what to report. They rather report some gross, ugly, fat, disgusting looking Democrat rambling on about something that happened over a year ago.
To potentially seize voting machines, even though it's a discussion. The public needs to know.
Well, it is unclear who wrote that draft executive order, and the House Committee is not aware of any operation plans to carry out the plan. But the chairman said they do know that a potential person was identified to become the next Attorney General who would communicate and interfere with certain states in ratifying their results. We'll stay on top of that story for you. Coming up right here on the show, Beijing flexes its military muscle, flying dozens of
China-Taiwan tensions. That's a good propaganda piece too. So this country is going to do everything it can to turn us against China and disrespect China and hate them and not care at all about what they want, about their history, about their laws, about the way it's been, about the facts on the ground. They just want emotional hysteria, you to do what they think and feel like they want you to feel. Turn on the news to try to scare you about China and Russia over and over and over and over. That's their go-to. That's their bread and butter. It's funny, in the U.S. there's very few Russian and Ukrainian people compared to everybody else, the other types of people in the country. So they must have a very difficult time getting anybody to give a crap about any of this stuff. Although the anti-Russian sentiment is real big, that probably plays pretty well to the military, because the military has been hearing their anti-Russia diatribe for years and years and years. It's built in. Talk to somebody that was an adult in the 1980s, and they'll have a hatred for Russia probably, or at least a concern or a suspicion. And of course the news plays on all of that. It's big business to get people to think that they need to keep watching the news and paying their taxes so they can spend it on the military, because these countries are so dangerous and we gotta look out for them. I love money so much I gotta watch commercials. But I hate commercials, so I change it. Both stations, commercials. I hate it. I hate commercials. The weirdest, stupidest shit is advertised in commercials, and the people that are in commercials look like total, complete assholes. Just disgusting wannabes, weirdos. Every goddamn person I see on a commercial, it's like, Jesus. Where do they get these psychopaths? Probably stupid. These people look like morons.
Now, Taiwan says mainland China sent nearly 40 warplanes into its air defense zone on Sunday. The latest
China sent 39 warplanes into air defense zone.
The Defense Ministry says the planes included dozens of fighter jets and a nuclear.
This is important to me. Why?
Now, in response, Taiwan says it deployed air defense missile systems to monitor the situation. Beijing's show of force comes one day
people
after
float
US
so
and
much
Japan
nonsense.
Conducted naval drills east
And they
of
want me to
Taiwan.
get upset about so many things that I will not get upset about. I wonder what they're keeping and not reporting. Stuff that I actually should care about, and stuff I should actually know and learn and think about.
Taiwan reacted in the same way as
Sure as hell don't care about this.
when Beijing carries out these incursions, which is done frequently over recent years. It does have to scramble and it activates its missile defense system. It also gives verbal warnings. And Taiwan has really criticized Beijing for what it calls these grey zone tactics, for really putting the pressure on, really testing the air force and the reaction of Taiwan itself. Now, as you say, it was a significant incursion in the sheer number of aircraft that were involved. Not the most ever, certainly the most this year. 34 fighter jets among the 39 warplanes in all. Now, it does come just a day, as you say, after the US and the Japanese navies did have a very significant show of force in the waters off the east coast of Taiwan, in the Philippine Sea. It's not clear exactly how close it was to Taiwan. That information is not forthcoming. But what we saw there was a very large military drill, a Navy drill. We saw from the US side, for example, a couple of aircraft carriers, amphibious assault ships, among other things. From the Japanese side, a helicopter destroyer. So it was a significant show of force. From the US point of view, it is part of their freedom of navigation.
This is kind of like, imagine if Cuba became like a really successful country and had lots of money and bought all kinds of weapons and things, and that's kind of like what it's like to see for China and Taiwan.
For many years, the US saying it was conducting training to preserve and
riddled
protect the free and open
problems,
Indo-Pacific
and they're not
region.
a big power, so the US doesn't worry about them.
That we saw
But the U.S. is selling, if I'm not mistaken, the U.S. and others are selling weapons to Taiwan.
And have seen an increase over recent years. Either in India and the United States.
And which, includes whatever, peacekeepers, advisors, people there to teach them how to use the weapons, some military or whatever. So they're clearly picking Taiwan over China. Taiwan's not buying Chinese weapons.
50,000 people demonstrated against COVID restrictions on Sunday.
So the U.S. just doesn't care about stuff like this. And they never have. And that's why they got their ass kicked in Afghanistan too, I think. Because they don't keep track of regional allies. They don't understand or factor in the regional history and the regional allies of these countries in the way it has been for a long, long time. They just pop in somewhere and then they want things to be different in the way they want them to be. And they disrespect the way things were and the way things are.
What do these protesters want to see from the government? Because COVID cases there continue to spike.
They have no vision whatsoever for their enemies. And people they consider.
Yeah, look, Keith, these protesters want to see the restrictions, the COVID restrictions in Belgium and across Europe start to go away. Right now,
we can
Belgium,
protest across Europe over restrictions
by the letter of the law,
mandates.
should have been wearing masks because they were at a large
Showing
gathering.
one B
They also
roll,
should have been social distancing as
just a
well.
bunch of
There are
smoke.
also
Brussels, Belgium.
curfews in place for restaurants and bars as Belgium continues to use the COVID pass
This is
as
happening
well.
everywhere.
There were also protests in France over the weekend. They're upset after a court upheld the legality of the new health pass law in France, which comes into effect today. It requires vaccinations for a range of really everyday activities. Restaurants,
This is horrifying
bars,
hearing about
even
required
regional
vaccinations.
transit is affected. So like
I'm not getting a
South
required
Korea,
vaccination.
It is very difficult to get vaccinated in France. That appears to be
Some of these
by
countries,
design. The
I
French
think,
president has
are
made no secret
overreacting
in the
and
past of
being
his
a
desire
little dystopian
to
and
piss off the
overbearing
unvaccinated to try to
government
encourage
overreach
them to get
because
the shot.
of the way the
A little more
U.S.
than
has
encouragement,
acted.
it seems. Some countries have
But
gone
it's
even
funny,
further
the
than
U.S.
that.
court
Austrian
system
lawmakers have voted to
shot down
mandate
Joe
people to
Biden's
get the vaccine,
mandate.
setting fines for
And I
people
don't think
who
this could be
continue to refuse. And German
overemphasized
lawmakers
enough.
will begin debate soon.
That was
at a
like the
similar
shot heard
law to
around the
have a
world
similar
when
vaccine
the court
mandate
said,
for
no,
almost everyone
you
in the
can't
country.
make
Things look a lot
businesses with over
different
100
though here on
people
the other
get
side of the English Channel,
coronavirus
Lisa, and that is because the
vaccinations.
government has already said
As soon as that
no one
happened,
has to work from home,
companies
there's
started
no
jumping
one in
ship.
the office, there's no
The
longer
companies
mask
that,
requiring
like
schools.
Starbucks, that
That was
had
as of
made
last week, and then
employees
this Thursday,
either do it or
the
get ready to
mandate
do
across
it,
England
get
for
vaccinated
indoors
or
is
lose their
going,
job,
away
change
as well,
change
so
course,
is the COVID
and said,
pass,
nope,
which
you don't have to be
really
vaccinated
requires
now.
for large gatherings and for
And that was
nightclubs,
huge.
things like that. And so the health secretary's approach here has been, look,
If
we
the
need
liberal
to live
mainstream
with
media
COVID, kind of like we live
has
with
a
the
reason,
flu,
a financial
as this
reason
disease
for
becomes endemic.
backing
The UK has some serious advantages, though, over the rest of Europe.
universal
namely,
vaccines
two-thirds of
and
the
vaccine
population,
mandates.
the eligible population has been
They lost that
plus
one big time.
cases here, hospitalizations, they are falling.
And I think that even signaled the end
Well,
of this whole entire pandemic.
I'm forward to see colleagues back in the office, including yourself, Scott. Good to see you, Scott. Thanks so much.
That was the last hurrah.
Coming up right here on the show, it's been 2 years since Wuhan first went into
In the
lockdown.
United
Now,
States,
less than 2
I think
weeks
they're gonna
before the
have-
Winter Olympic Games, we take a look at
They
what
might
the
have
country is
less
doing
and
to
less
prepare
power
for
and
what's
less and less
changed since 2020.
wherewithal to make
Whilst
people
an
jump
attack
through
that may
hoops
have
and
taken
get
months to
shots
plan,
now that that
a
happens.
battle is underway
No matter
to
what
replace
happens with the
prison
virus.
housing ISIS militants in Syria.
Only a virus
Inmates
that's much,
took
much,
over,
much
while it
worse
could signal ISIS is
would have a
regrouping with
potential to
something
go
bigger.
back through the court system and get another look.
You hope so.
More commercials on both networks. Fox News and CNN are the only two live news stations right now. Forensic Files 2 coming in February. HLN. I think HLN is CNN's sister network. I watch Forensic Files on that station. It's a good show. Next month they're coming out with brand new ones.
This is CNN.
Welcome back to CNN Newsroom. I'm Eva Suarez. If you're just joining us, let me bring you up to date with our top story this hour. The US and UK are withdrawing some families and staff at the embassies in Ukraine amid growing fears of a Russian invasion. Meanwhile, EU foreign ministers are meeting in Brussels this hour to discuss nearly 127,000 troops standing by. Have much more ahead on this about 30 minutes or so in early start. And tensions between Taiwan and mainland China are ratcheting up as well. Taiwan says China sent nearly 40 warplanes into the air sent on Sunday, a day after the US and Japan conducted naval drills east of Taiwan. In response to the show of force from Beijing, Taiwan deployed its air defense missile system. Now, in the coming hours, opening statements are set to begin in the federal civil rights trial for three former military police officers indicted in connection with George Floyd's murder. The three men have been charged, as you can see there, with violating Floyd's constitutional rights during his arrest in May 2020. Two of the former officers face another charge alleging they did nothing to stop former officer Derek Chauvin from kneeling on Floyd's neck for more than 9 minutes, leading to his death. Chauvin pleaded guilty to civil rights charges last month and faces up to 25 years in prison. Gun violence has Americans on edge across the country. Crime rates are up in major cities, and in the last few days, police officers have been shot
police officers shot amid rising crime.
As well as New York. A 22-year-old New York police officer was shot and killed while responding to a domestic incident in Harlem on Friday night. A second officer is in critical condition. New York's mayor explained what steps will take to CNN. Salabash.
New York's mayor is an ex-cop, so he probably cares a lot.
This is a sea of crime that's been fed by many rivers. We have to dam each one of those rivers. We have to go after those laws that are not realistic, on understanding what's happening on the ground. We have to stop the flow of guns.
On New York's government plans to hold a multi-state task force meeting on illegal guns, and that is happening on Wednesday. And a
Your governor plans
manhunt
task
is underway in Texas for the man who gunned down a deputy constable. Police say Deputy Constable Charles Galloway was killed while making a traffic stop on Sunday. Witnesses say the man got out of his car and started shooting with an assault-type weapon. Authorities say the motive was unknown.
He got out of his vehicle and immediately fired upon the deputy multiple times, striking him, and then drove off. This is senseless. It makes no sense whatsoever.
What we are seeing on what appears to be a regular basis on the streets of Harris County has got to stop. It has got to stop. These are not assaults. These are not attacks. These are brutal murders.
Harris County.
For the 47-year-old Deputy Constable was a 12-year-old Bulgarian veteran on the forces behind the Now, in the coming hour, the police tell the junior
Assange should learn if you're going to appeal UK High Court ruling. Good, I'm glad they're covering Assange. I was going to ask them to do that.
Remember, won an appeal against a ruling that he could not be extradited after agreeing to special conditions to protect charge of mental health. But his lawyers argue those assurances are vague and meaningless. For more, let's bring in CNN's Nina Santos here in London. And Nina, talk us through the legal steps here, because it's been a rather long battle for him as he tries to avoid being extradited to the US. Well, this is it's going to be an even longer battle from here.
See, Assange is not a U.S. citizen, so it's pretty brave for him to get extradited to the U.S.
Either one of two ways. Essentially what we've got in about 45 minutes time is that kind of decision coming out of one of the senior courts in the UK about whether or not Julian Assange's legal team, on the grounds that they put forward, actually have the right to appeal against that decision that was delivered on the 10th of December, essentially paving the way for Julian Assange to potentially be extradited to the United States because of all these different assurances that the court and legal experts who've been given by US diplomats and the Department of Justice that Julian Assange would be treated in different conditions that they said would be a danger to his life, that essentially US authorities would take into account the fact that he might be at higher risk of suicide and prevent that. Well, essentially now what we've got is it can go one of two ways. It could be shut down at this stage. Julian Assange's team have put forward various arguments saying that this case is politically motivated, that Assange would not be able to get a fair trial in the United States if he was extradited there to face justice, and also that it would have a chilling effect on freedom of speech in this country, not just for Julian Assange, but for journalists as well, and human rights activists. So that is the argument being played out right now as we speak in the London courthouse, and depending on which way it could go, it could either be expedited to the Home Secretary of Julian Assange's legal team until they do not have the grounds to appeal. If they do have the grounds to appeal, well, then we should expect a much, much longer than 1 year. If things go towards the Home Secretary at this point, then the option potentially of going to the European Human Rights Court to try and get justice there. But that may be further down the line, and again, will project things for much, much longer. So, again, another chapter in this very long-running legal saga. Indeed, and we'll expect a decision in about 20 minutes and so forth, so without more, and a couple later than that. Nina Santos there, thanks so much, Nina. Now, the US-backed Syrian Democratic Forces are tightening their siege of a prison for housing ISIS suspects. After inmates took over the facility, there has been fierce fighting inside the hamlet. Now, the SDF say at least 27 of their fighters, dozens of ISIS members, and at least 15 inmates have been killed so far. Hundreds of civilians, including women as well as children, fled homes in nearby areas following the ISIS attack. CNN's Al-Dawn joins me from Istanbul, Turkey, with the latest. And Al, talk us through what is happening inside this prison and how much control the SDF has here.
Well, he's at this stage claiming to have control over the surrounding areas, and they've in fact implemented a curfew in the larger towns and villages around the prison itself. But
siege tightens after ISIS really prison break in Syria.
Another story. This has been going on since Thursday, and this takeover of the prison by these ISIS fighters did not necessarily start with the inmates. It was very much a well-planned and coordinated attack. That, according to the SDF statement, which they are basing on statements that they have gotten from ISIS fighters that they say that they detained. This was around 6 months in the planning and involved about 200 ISIS fighters initially attacking the front gate of the prison and then being able to storm inside, while at the same time prisoners began to riot as well. Now, this particular facility holds more than 3,000 ISIS fighters. Worth noting, too, Issa, that a number of these prisoners essentially are minors, and they're not just from Iraq and Syria. They have nationalities from dozens of countries around the world. And this is
12,000 suspected ISIS fighters detained across Syria.
The Syrian Democratic Forces, that predominantly Kurdish fighting force that has been backed by the U.S.-led coalition, have been warning about for quite some time. They have been saying that they don't have the capability to be able to continue to hold these thousands of prisoners in facilities across the region. They have been anticipating this sort of an attack, saying that it would be complete at some point or another, and now most certainly it has, demonstrating the sort of threat that ISIS does continue to pose. ISIS reportedly employing sleeper cells to carry out this particular attack. Other things that raise concerns are, for example, these long, sprawling but ramshackle camps that exist in this area that are mostly housing women and children claimed to be affiliated with members of ISIS. They've been living under austere conditions for years right now, and again, many of them foreign nationals whose own countries are refusing to take them back. And so at this stage, the SDF is pointing to all of this as a clear indication that on the one hand, ISIS has not necessarily been entirely defeated. Analysts will say that this is most certainly an organization that knows how to bide its time, take advantage of targets of opportunity, continue to carry out, albeit on a smaller scale, complex attacks. And this is exactly why the international community should not lose sight of what's happening in the ground in swaths of Syria and must be noted, Iraq as well.
Important context there from our Damon there in beautiful, snowy Istanbul. Thanks very much.
Yep. Snowy
Now,
Istanbul.
coming up, we'll take a look at how the lockdown in Wuhan in 2020 set a precedent for China's COVID policies. We'll answer you.
Wuhan, 2 years later.
Right about now, a similar activity during Navy operations in October. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says other bad actors are taking note of Joe Biden's weakness. Listen.
They're watching to see if this administration has the resolve and the steel to use all these tools to preserve sovereignty for a nation like Ukraine. I promise you,
I can't imagine Trump doing any better. I don't think Trump was any better. He just talked all crazy and offensive all the time.
People as well. The whole world watches how America leads, and when we fail to do so, we create instability.
Didn't Russia take Crimea under Trump?
Deterrence in the model of Reagan and the model that we had for our 4 years. If we do that, America will be safe and secure and prosperous. The world will be more stable.
No, Trump put tariffs on China, and then that's when, right afterwards, the coronavirus hit the country.
Thousands of people push against COVID
Like I said,
restrictions in
these people
Washington, D.C.
don't have
as
any vision for their
the
enemies.
mandate rally. Demonstrators kicking off the rally at the Washington Monument before making their way to the Lincoln Memorial. Organizers say they object to forcing people to get the shot, but not the vaccines themselves. Firefighters from across the country, some not working due to the vaccine mandate, stood
They
in
just think they'll go away.
solidarity with the
And they'll think
demonstrators.
they'll play the long game and they'll win. Maybe because the U.S. has a high GDP. But I think China can play the long game a lot longer than the U.S. can. Because China doesn't have trillions and trillions of dollars of debt like the U.S. does.
Of pushing for the
U.S. is a
poor and
debtor
convincing
country.
the public to get
China
vaccinated.
is a
Greg
lender
Urban
country.
is the owner of Wild Bread Saloon in Minneapolis.
They don't want to
He's
fix the
involved
tough
in this
things.
lawsuit, and he joins me now. So,
They want people
Greg,
to
in
think
order to
things
go
are
to a
okay.
restaurant now in Minneapolis, you either have to be vaccinated
So
or
that's
show
a
a negative
recipe for
COVID
them to
test.
one day
You are suing over
be
this. Why did you
horrendous.
decide to take legal action?
Well, a rather large group of similarly situated businesses, very diverse group too, got together and we said, look, we need to push back on this. We're going into year 3 of 2 weeks to slow the spread, and we think it's time to get on with our lives and return to a normal society. So we figured it was time we had to stand up.
This business owner talking about something in Minneapolis. It's sad, you know, how dialed in these stations like Fox News are when it comes to reporting on stories in different cities. I mean, you can put money on it. If it's a Democratic-run city, they'll trash it. They'll find whatever in the hell they want wrong with it. Crime, anything. Mandates, anything. If it's
Now, with less than 2 weeks to go before the Winter Olympics and just days before the Chinese New Year, mass testing is underway for more than 2
They have like a
million people
Rolodex,
in
I'm sure,
Beijing. Hundreds
of
are in quarantine.
Democratic Party
Public gatherings
mayors
are
and
banned
governors in
some
places
Now,
like
Chinese authorities have also
Minnesota
lowered the
and
testing threshold for
New York and wherever else.
essentially
And they just
making it
match up the
easier
negative
to
story
produce
with the
a negative
Democratic
test. And you may
government
recall
and let it
2
fly.
years ago that China first ordered a lockdown in Wuhan.
If you think I'm mistaken,
to contain the outbreak.
then I want to know a handful of stories that are glowing, positive, wonderful stories about a Democratic Party ruling or governing a city or a state.
And it wasn't until April
It'd be very, very hard to find them.
and travel back in.
On the other hand, CNN doesn't really have a lot of glowing stuff about the red states or Republican mayors or governors in their regions either.
Ahead of Christmas, normally packed,
That's why I
right?
listen to all these
Well,
different
that would be
stations,
good.
because they're so full of shit,
It's rather sparse.
and they care so much about their nonsense, and they hate the other side so much that all they're good for is giving me some kind of picture of what they believe in and what they think. That's the only thing I get out of these goddamn news stations. Not necessarily the truth,
It is so sensitive
not
that within
the
minutes
truth
of
about their
arriving and
opponents,
reporting,
not
security
the truth,
access
entire
was not
truth about the
full.
world.
There is an uneasiness felt
But I
throughout
do
Wuhan.
get their story about their people and their stuff and their nonsense from their opinion, which is a percentage of society. So, even though it's shit, I'm happy to figure out what these fools think and what means the most to them. While they're polluting the goddamn planet to the point of no fucking return and eating shit
And yet at the same time,
and calling it food while they create diseases. I'd like to know what means the most to these assholes.
Right from the beginning, CNN features been now live from Beijing. And David, give us a sense of where things stand 2 years on, especially with China's zero COVID policies. How effective has it been from your vantage point?
I them to go on record too.
Hearing all of those previous reports,
So when the fucking planet's burning to a cinder because they're making millions of dollars and still burning goddamn fossil fuels, and you can point squarely at them for why we're circling the goddamn toilet
zero
bowl.
COVID strategy. What are we experiencing today? That same zero COVID approach. It is a very strict approach.
It'd be very, very, very obvious.
Certainly on the eve of the
Anybody with
Olympics,
over
it is
$1
something
million
that's going to remain in place. It
should not live in a house that burns coal, should not drive a car that burns gasoline.
The result of
Call that a moral judgment, call it whatever the hell you want. But if you have enough money to avoid fucking the place out, then avoid fucking the place out.
The contact tracing, which is the smartphone tracing, but they follow us
Or else you'll be judged for it.
on our devices. You also have the
And you
map
won't be
testing.
judged like a poor person.
Tens of millions, and early on, they really didn't have that kind of capacity. Now they certainly do. And you have the lockdowns. So Wuhan was an extreme example. It was a city of more than 11 million people. The
Losers say
entire
really.
lockdown. We've seen that recently. For example, Xi'an. That was an example where they had
Pray there's no
likewise
God.
seal off the entire city.
I know how you live, I know what you burn, I know what you eat.
Certainly not the duration of 7
Pray
days.
there's no God.
But one thing that is worth noting is there has been an evolution, if you will, of some of these techniques. For example, the cell phone tracing, the contact tracing. One thing that's just come to our attention today
So if you don't change,
has
that's your
been that if
only
you go
hope.
to a pharmacy and you want to buy maybe a cough drop, a fever medication, early on they would make sure that clinical note and they report it to the local community. Now it's all tracked on your phone. So I have friends who have been flagged. Their health code, which is really your entry into everything of public life here, from restaurants to parks to airports to train stations.
I think if God exists and God only wants homeless people in heaven, I think God could make a very good case for why that's the best thing, the most appropriate thing.
That's what's happening right now in Beijing.
God doesn't want anything to do with anybody else except for the homeless people.
Because of the Olympics, there's no question.
And very quickly, how many COVID tests have you taken, David?
101 as of today, and I just got
It's
the
a shame.
results. So it's 101
It's a shame that people
results too. So
think that they have integrity
Wonderful,
when they don't.
wonderful news. As always, great work, David.
But if you're a millionaire and you're burning fossil fuels, you have no
Coming up on
integrity.
CNN Newsroom, a winter wildfire burns near
You're
California's
scum.
iconic Highway 1.
You deserve to be hated.
Edwin Jabahara is tracking that and all.
And an unusually large fire for the
Winter
month of January
wildfire in
across
California.
California, more on that, and also very cold weather in South Florida.
And I'm just like,
Yeah, it kind of runs thin, you know, when too many chieftains or everybody's their own god, everybody makes their own rules. It's a miracle that churches still exist. There's just so many people that lack integrity inside and outside of the church that they haven't been able to, you know, appropriately be righteous and judge the church for what it is. In other words, people that go to church and people that don't go to church do the exact same things, the exact same horrible things. So nobody has the ability to show righteous indignation at the other. And so that's why they both fail. And that's why they can't stop sinning. And that's why we're circling the fucking toilet bowl. Pretty sad and pathetic. I was houseless for many years, and I hate pollution. I swore up and down that I was never ever going to pollute the place again with, you know, coal pollution and gas pollution and conventional food pollution and chemical pollution. All the ways that you pollute the goddamn place 24 hours a day without even thinking about it, and still thinking that you're a good person, great person, whatever. Yeah, all that shit I pledge to leave behind. Nobody ever tells you that if you actually follow the Bible to a T, that you'll realize that nobody else does. They don't tell you that at church. They don't tell you that when you try to be like Jesus, you go to Bible study. Nobody says that. Nobody says that. If you're able to stop sinning and be a righteous person, perfect in your ways, you will realize that 0 other people act that way. And it's a bad feeling. It's a shitty feeling. It's feeling like you're all alone, like nobody takes this goddamn religion seriously, and nobody takes life seriously, and then nobody gives a shit about anything that matters. That's what you'll realize if you're ever able to change. I just can't believe that they've convinced people to be unknown, unpopular, ugly, dumb, fat, and then still destroy the planet with their lifestyle every single second of every single day they're polluting. Like, Jesus Christ. It's one thing, you know, in my opinion, if you're an amazing person and doing great things constantly, and there's nobody else like you, and you're totally unique, and you're just knocking the ball out of the park every single day, and then you have a little pollution, that's one thing. But being just a fucking sheep in a goddamn cog, just a waste of space, and then fucking the place up beyond recognition every single day, I don't want to be you.
Died at the age of 73, who is known for his provocative as well as
this guy's ugly.
designs. Even creating
Jesus.
a metallic one piece for Lady Gaga's music video, Paparazzi. Came out of retirement to bring this wet look. Remember the look from Met Gala dress tonight for Kim Kardashian.
That's a weird key. It's kind of flat.
Self-named label in 1974 and has made his mark on international fashion by the 80s. Tributes, as you can imagine, have been pouring in from celebrities and fans alike. Diana Ross tweeting, "I will miss you. This was a wonderful time in our lives." Creative director of US fashion label wrote on Instagram, "You changed our perception of beauty, of confidence, of representation, and self-empowerment." Now, a wildfire in California is forcing hundreds to evacuate.
I don't know if there's a God or not, but it really shouldn't matter to anybody if they're thinking about changing their behavior.
Gusty winds really helping the fire grow.
I don't know
And
who's
so
going
far,
to be more
the
harsh
fire
on this
has burned
generation,
about 35%
the next
contained.
generation,
CNN
or God.
meteorologist John Harry has the latest. Good morning, John.
Yes, he said certainly an unusual setup here to see fire activity across the state of California. The only large active fire in the state and one of only 12 fires in the entire United States.
Colorado fire, 700 acres, 75 or 35% contained.
35% containment. Good news with this is the winds are dying down. Bad news is the incredible drought scenario that has been in place, of course, for years across the state of California. Even with the abundant rainfall we saw in November and December, almost the entirety of the state still dealing with moderate to severe drought. Shows you why January fires are possible. Of course, the gusty winds on Saturday across this region, high pressure is in place as well, so that offshore component of the wind helped fuel a fire that was ignited, and the recipe, of course, is placed for the fire to expand. For now, the winds are forecast to die down over the next several days. Should give the firefighters the upper hand here as we go in, of course, maybe Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Maybe get this fire out. But here we go. High pressure building again across the southwest. Big story. Everybody across the areas of the Great Lakes. The cold air, coldest of the season, still in a little farther toward the south. A little snow showers, not an impressive amount, just a couple of inches unless you're on those favorite areas on the shores of Lake Michigan and across portions of eastern Great Lakes. But cold air, the top of South Central Florida, South Georgia even, southern Florida, with some frost advisories with these temperatures getting to the freezing mark. Look at Fort Myers, 39 degrees, should be into the middle 50s, while in Miami, dipping down to 43 degrees, where the average temperature this time of year
Bitter cold temperatures in parts of the U.S.
about 61. Of course, in northern Florida, bone chilling for their standards down to 27 degrees. A couple of blasts of cold air still in store. Much of it doesn't get as forced off this go around, but you'll notice, across parts of the Great Lakes, plenty cold.
10 degrees in Minneapolis,
Chicago,
72 in LA,
Minneapolis,
66 in Miami.
Atlanta, that's the commute.
There's the highs. 32 in Boston.
Not bad at all, thank you, Ram. Now, in American football, we are getting a clearer picture of who will face off in the Super Bowl. Now, next Sunday, the Kansas City Chiefs host the Bengals in the AFC Championship. This, after a dramatic game this weekend where the Chiefs beat.
Nothing I can care about less than this game.